Welcome to the program. There is the People's Bench coming to you from Muthu Silver Springs Hotel here in Nairobi. A very wonderful place for you to come and relax, especially during these festivities. For much more, you can scan the QR code right on your screen. I am your host, Fred Ogweno, and tonight we are talking matters post-COVID-19. How safe are we? And to debunk this, I'm privileged to have Professor Shem Otoi. He is a COVID-19 expert. He's here to tell us a lot of fears that we are hearing on social media, even from our leaders, about the rise in sudden deaths that cannot be explained. Are we safe? Prof, how are you?
I'm
My
very
brother,
well, Fred.
welcome to the bench.
Glad to meet you. I'm glad to be here.
Asante sana.
Thank you.
There is the bench by the people, for the people, with the people, and from the people. And the people are so scared about post-COVID-19. But before we get there, Prof, you could probably introduce yourself, tell us more about you, what you do, and before we come to why we are here.
My name is Shem Otoi Sam. I am a teacher. No, professor is a glorified teacher. I am a teacher. First, I teach at this university. I am an infectious disease modeling expert, and I have had a long history of modeling, not only infectious diseases, but other natural phenomena. Now, I am the expert that created the model that predicted all the COVID-19 waves in Kenya, and that were used to either lift up the lockdown or install the lockdown. And I am very, very delighted to be here at the bench to discuss these matters of post-COVID conditions, or rather post-COVID fatalities. Thank you, Fred.
Asante sana. Just slightly, you were able to predict COVID-19, almost accurately about the various, the variants, how people were going to be affected almost a week on a weekly basis. How were you able to do that?
First, I must admit that I'm a local expert. Most African countries do not like their local experts. When we first developed the model, it's called Otoy model. When we first developed the model, we used local data, and we ran the model and found that almost every day, as the minister was giving announcements, they actually tallied with what we had predicted. Now, we approached several implementers of health to have this adopted to support response. I remember we approached the British Council. At that time, 2 other professors came from Oxford University with their models that they wanted to be adopted in Africa. One of them was Professor Mackenzie and Julius. So we were put to a test. We gave our predictions of what was going to happen when the waves are going to occur. In our case, we gave a prediction for almost a whole year, 4 waves in one run, which some people considered preposterous. Then Mackenzie and Julius gave 1. Now, when the British Council started following, everything Mackenzie and his colleague predicted failed. Ours ticked like a clock, went through. So what is it that we did that other people did not do? In our model, first, local. Every disaster is well understood in a local language. We used the local data. Then the next thing we did, we incorporated socio-economic influences, socio-environmental influences that would impact either the super spreaders or that would lead to less spread. And that is how we developed Otoy Narema. If you looked at some of the dashboards that we use, there were periods when there were moving averages of 3 days, 4 days, 7 days. We observed it and realized this is going to be very good, very interesting. So we modeled it around moving averages and around reinfections, like that. Thank you, Fred.
I hear you. That seems to be very interesting, Prof. And tell me, during COVID, we saw the number of deaths that were happening, in other countries, in Japan, in Italy, people dying in their big numbers. And so was expected to happen in Africa, but it did not go that way. Was it God or who saved us?
I heard some people saying that God is an African, but that cannot be the case. The thing is, look at developed countries. Look at their demographic graph. They are mostly aged population, and age is associated with comorbidities and underlying conditions that made them die in large numbers. African population is mostly youthful. The most youth population do not have a lot of underlying conditions. That is one explanation. The other explanation, in Africa, we also had our traditional or local remedies that did not have to be dispensed at the hospitals. We are here forgetting that before the coming of the Western education, the education of Africa was called enterpriseship, where people used to learn from the people who preceded them. Take, for example, when the originators, the people who originally Americans were called Native Americans, there are very few today. They're almost decimated. The people who are in Australia, originally are called Aborigines, they are almost decimated. How did we survive? Our sciences were more advanced. Malaria did not kill us as it killed our invaders. And every other disease, we had a remedy for it. Now, whereas some people referred to that as traditional medicine, it was the real medicine. Most people in Africa resorted to local experts, local innovations, and that is how we survived. Look, Madagascar came with Artemisia. In as much as it was shrouded in controversy, it was a local thing. Many of us here in Kenya used a lot of traditional concoctions, and somehow we survived. We also had leadership, even at subnational level, leadership that was able to listen to experts. Remember what Trump did in the US at that time? Started saying chlorophyll was going to become a remedy that side. Actually anti-science. But here, most leaders in Africa realized that we were as affected as the West. And the problem, our solution was not going to come from far. We had to deal with it. The moment Africans will realize that we can solve our problems, we will be a superpower.
But look, Prof, everything we run to them. We have believed the white man that they are the solution for everything.
The white man is running to Africa for resources. Why are we running to them? Once we use our local resources, they will be coming here. We will not be going there. We just have to sort out our leadership in Africa.
I hear you.
Yes.
Allow me to remind our viewers that there is just the part one of our conversation tonight about post-COVID-19 effect. And also, please remember to subscribe on our YouTube channel, that is at the People's Bench, so that anytime we are having this kind of conversation, you'll be able to get the notification. Prof, back to COVID-19. Tell me, there were a lot of myths, about this COVID-19, where it originated from, whether it was developed by a white man, they wanted to wipe some population. Where exactly did COVID-19 originate from?
That is one part. Thank you for asking that question, because there are two schools of thought. One believed this escaped from a laboratory. The other group felt this jumped from Wuhan, China wet market from bats. We have talked elaborately in this book on the origin of COVID and what is considered most conclusive origin of COVID. Look, under what we call One Health, man has encroached into the habitat of other organisms. It will not be the first time. Viruses have been jumping from people, from wild animals to the people. COVID-19 is coronavirus disease 19. It's not the first coronavirus, all of which have jumped from the animals. So if it was not that interactions and gaps in One Health, we wouldn't have lost all the 7 million people globally who died of coronavirus. Realize that during that particular time, either US or China were accusing each other of espionage, and nobody wanted to share the pathogen information on COVID. So that is why people have been doubting the origin, because it was shrouded in some kind of mystery. But after all, in the investigation, we go for the most plausible reason, which is it originated from interaction between man and wildlife.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you so much for the book. I know you're going to sign this one for me. And defeating COVID-19 in the African front line. A very wonderful piece here. Where can someone get this book?
There are copies of this book at Nuria Bookshop, Bazaar Plaza, here in Nairobi CBD. A copy is there.
And it goes at how much?
It goes at 3,440 pages. A well-researched book.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. And for our viewers, you can get the book so that you will be able to get more information about that. We are now turning to the real elephant in the room. How safe are we post-COVID-19? Prof, we are hearing a lot of cases that people are dying left, right, and center. Sudden, unexplained death. Leaders are speaking that there is need for research. Whether the COVID vaccine, is really exacerbating this kind of death, whether, COVID-19 left our bodies, so much with a lot of effect. How safe are we? And what is the effect of this COVID-19?
Thank you for that question. That is the present debate. Let's take, for example, that you invited your friends in your house for a party, not a tea party, the alcoholic drinks. And there are many people. Then all they disagreed along the way, and there was a brawl, there was a big fight there. Tomorrow in the morning when you wake up, there are certain damages that you can sweep away, and the items that have just to be replaced. That is what COVID did to our body. It affected the brain, the lungs, the skin, the kidney, the veins in our body. The tissues that are in these organs, one way or another, were damaged. Our veins, the epithelial injury that happened within the linings of the veins, some of which have resulted in what is called thrombocytis. So thromboembolism. So what we are looking at now, one is many organs in our bodies have been damaged because this is the area of what we call long COVID. Long COVID is defined as if symptoms persist beyond 4 weeks, you're most likely having long COVID. It is the syndromes that persist beyond 4 weeks. For some, it has existed 6 months, when the others is still just going on. The difference between a syndrome and a symptom is that syndrome is a collection of symptoms. So managing COVID calls for multi-specialty clinic where the brain is looked at, the heart is looked at, the lungs are looked at, the kidney are looked at. Now, when we had two categories of people. We had people with many underlying conditions. And we had people who had few or no underlying conditions. We had people we would refer to as immunocompromised. The immunity was already bad. So these people were largely damaged by COVID. It affected the tissues of these organs. For some, for like the kidney, it affected the capillaries, the small vessels therein, the capillaries, to the extent that after COVID, the acute kidney injury, referred to as AKI, has become so common. You find somebody who used to pass out urine twice a day is now doing 30 times a day. They need to go for checkup to see what. People never used to have chest disease and now having chest disease. People who had very good memory now have memory loss. They can't remember something just like that. That is long COVID, what it did. Now that is one. Many people have said that vaccines could be contributing factor. Yes and no. Let's start with the no part of it. If it was not for the vaccines, so many people would have been wiped out. So many people would have died. And so, when the manufacturers had finally found the vaccines, they were under pressure to make as many dosages as possible to protect world population. Certain stages in developing the vaccine were bypassed. It takes not less than 10 years to develop and go through all the tests from guinea pig to clinical trials until it is cleared to be safe. But because of emergency, all these stages were bypassed. So that is one reason.
So what is the meaning of that, Prof? Are we safe? Were we given the right thing? Because people are worried outside here, and you've said that the vaccine was a very good thing,
Yes.
And people took it. I took it, We need this thing
I also
cleared.
took it.
You also took it.
3 doses.
And that is why I asked you, how safe are we?
Yes. There are studies. For example, a group called Brighton Collaborations conducted thorough studies and linked some vaccines to blood clot. But the good side is this. If there were no vaccines, we would have lost billions of people. We only lost 704,000 people.
There is here in Kenya. Globally.
Yes. In Kenya, we lost 5,398 people. Those that are confirmed. There are those people who died at home. We haven't confirmed. Now, if there was no vaccine, a lot of people would have died. And most of those people would have died. Most of them are outside Africa, unfortunately, because Africa has a youthful population. Most developed countries, like look at the population pyramid of Japan. They are mostly elderly people. So vaccine helped to save the lives of people. Now let's look at it this way. Yes, vaccines could have caused some adverse effect. But if you look at against the people who are protected because of it, it is an evil that can be accommodated.
It was better off having them, having
than
the
not
vaccine
having
than not
them.
having.
Now, the problem, the challenge that now we are facing as, let's say in Kenya, because this was emergency approval, everybody else that took vaccine, we should have followed them up, even for years, to see if there's a pattern of death, a pattern of some adverse effects. That has not happened in this country. And yes, studies have linked some blood clot to vaccines, but those are isolated cases. But because we do not have proper follow-up to ensure that those people who are vaccinated will see the patterns, the journey, their health journey, we have gaps.
Thank you, Prof. I have researched and tried also to read about what is happening in other countries, but I've not found any information, online that could directly attribute the sudden deaths, particularly in developed countries, to the COVID vaccine. Maybe we might say Kenya, we have not done that, but are there some studies that have been done in other developed countries that could directly link or associate the vaccine with post-COVID-19 deaths?
Brighton Collaborations did a thorough study, and they linked some cases, for example, non-hemorrhagic stroke and hemorrhagic stroke to some types of vaccine. Hemorrhagic stroke is when blood vessel in the brain breaks and blood comes into contact with the brain and you have a stroke, you die. Non-hemorrhagic stroke is when there's a blood clot in the brain and then it's blocked from breathing, then somebody dies. Brighton Collaborations linked that to some vaccines in their thorough study. So, looking at the trade-off, it's unfortunate that we are talking about life like that. Looking at the trade-off of what has been saved against what has been lost, it's a better evil or a better good, if we could put it so. The other thing that Kenyans and the rest of the world do not know, and I bet they should know, there is what we call no fault compensation scheme, where If your next of kin took vaccine and they either succumbed or got incapacitated as a result of adverse effect of the vaccine, they should be compensated.
We are coming to that, Prof. My director is reminding me that we are about to take a short commercial break, and then we will come back with part 2 of this conversation, because we cannot finish it in 30 minutes. So part 2, still loaded, with a lot of information about this. And also remember to subscribe on our YouTube channel, so that anytime we are having this kind of useful conversation, you will be able to get them.